Hi everyone, it's Aga from EurekaCrystalBeads.com and I'm here with another fun beading tutorial for you. Before I get started, just a quick reminder to check out the rest of our channel, and if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you always know when we're posting new content. Welcome to a spooky season video, or any season video really, if you like a gothic style jewelry. So today we're going to be doing Goth Girl Glam pendant. And to make it, you're going to need several basic ingredients, such as our new beautiful filigree connectors or findings or whatever that is, but it's just beautiful in the color antique copper. And you're going to need 4 of these, but go ahead and buy 2 full packs right away because in 2 weeks we're coming in with another tutorial with more of these, and it's going to be for a bracelet. Another thing you're going to need are beads, and as far as beads are concerned, you're going to need just 3 types of beads. These are going to be 11/0s in some gorgeous red color because red is kind of necessary for a gothic look. Then another necessary color, black, and I'm going to be using just shiny jet colored Toho Treasures. You can also use Miyuki Likas if you have them. And Toho 15/0s, Toho round 15. So these are the beads that we're going to need, nothing more when it comes to that. We're also going to need something to hang our pendant from, and I have this lovely terra cast bail. We have quite a large selection of them, so you can choose whatever you like. You can also make a bail out of beads. That's also a great idea. We have other videos where we show you how to do that. You're also going to need some tools, which are going to be needle. Here is size 11 needle. You're going to need thread, and I recommend you use a black thread because we're going to be stitching these onto beading foundation. So here I have 1G thread in black. As I said, we're going to need foundation because this is going to be a bead embroidery project. Very simple, very quick, but you're going to need some foundation. And to stiffen our pendant, I'm also going to use some cardstock. This was just in a pack of socks or something like that. So just use whatever you have to make your pendant more stiff. We're just going to need a little bit. So you can just not use anything at all as well. That will be also okay. It's just going to be a little bit more flexible. For the backing, I'm going to be using Ultra Suede, and this is, I think, light noir, but you can use anything that matches your aesthetic. I'm also going to use a lighter just to melt the end of my thread, but you can also just tie a knot on it. To glue the pendant to the back, I'm going to be using glue. This is E6000. You're also going to need some scissors, and to close this bail, I'm going to use flat nose or chain nose pliers. In addition to that, I'm also going to be using a regular pencil to just draw some guidelines on my beading foundation, and I think that's it. Let's start. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do some drawing. So I have my beading foundation, and I'm going to draw 2 lines across. By the way, this piece of beading foundation is, as you can see, just slightly more than 1.5 inches. So that's as much, even more than you're going to need, but I just like to have a little bit of a margin. You can cut off even a little bit more. I'm going to draw the first line from one corner to the other. What you're beading on, it doesn't have to be a square necessarily. It's just going to be easier to stitch on it this way, to embroider. The shape is kind of going to come out as we go, so it's not necessary for this to be a square because, well, to draw an exact angle, I'm going to use this lovely sticker here anyway, because what's important is that you have a right angle here, somewhere around the middle. So I'm just going to do this. And I'm just trying to show you how to do this with like whatever you have at hand. If you have like professional tools to make a right angle, feel free to use them. Okay, I have drawn these guidelines here on this beading foundation. Yeah, and that's all preparation that you need. Now I'm going to put some thread on my needle, and you can use as little or as much thread as you want, as you feel comfortable with. Because with bead embroidery, you can always just go to the back of your foundation, tie a knot, and add on new thread. It's that simple. Right, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start straight off the bat in the middle, whichever direction you want. As you can see, I went through the beading foundation with my needle slightly off center from the center, because we're going to be putting one red 11-0 bead in the center of our work. I'm going to go through it twice so that it sits tight where I want it to. Right, so now we have a single red bead in the center. And with these little guys, I'm just going to be putting them kind of touching these little round points to that red bead. And this is going to be the shape that we're going to want to have. And these guidelines will help me to kind of position these elements as I go. Now, the way I figured for this pendant to be is I looked at my batch of these filigree elements, and I figured some of these have like a hole in here. Maybe I'll show you. Some of these have like a hole in here, and if you have a high enough gauge wire, you can probably get it through and just hang it on somewhere. But I tried to figure out how you can use those that have their holes blocked, because, well, these are cast. I think this is cast metal, so they sometimes, especially when being oxidized or in the process of making them, they can have that hole blocked because it's very small. So I tried to find out a way you can use them even though they have this hole blocked, and to show you that this hole is not like a necessary element of these. So I'm going to be using them without using these holes. Okay, so I'm positioning this one. It's like touching the red bead, and this pointy end is on the line. I'm just pushing it down, and now I'll be stitching it down to the foundation in here, in these 2 points, because that's where the thread is going to be visible the least. So I'm trying to go close to that point over here. And now I'm going in the middle here. And again over here. So one side is stitched. What I'm gonna go and do now is I'm going to do the same over in here, because that's also where thread is not going to be visible. So I'm going inside over here. And just putting it down right outside it. And you can correct the positioning as you go with how you stitch it on to that foundation. Same on the other side. And there you go, that one is down. Now, as I go, I'm going to fill that in because I don't want these empty spaces just be left empty. So what I do is I'm going to fill it up with beads. And in here, I'm going to start by adding a 15 in this space over here. So I'm coming out next to that swirl and I'm picking up a 15 and I'm putting it down over here. Now, some of these elements will have these spaces slightly larger or slightly smaller. So you just have to adjust the size of the 15 sort of, because as you will see, in the case of Toho's, some of them are like more narrow, some of them are taller. So you just have to adjust it to your space. This is an element with quite a bit of space over here, so I'm just using whatever 15s I pick up. This is like a mid-sized one. And I'm adding it on the other side of this little swirl over at the top. Just like that. Okay, I'm doing the same thing on the other side. And in here, in that large space over here, I'm going to put a red 11 sideways, just like that. Okay, now I can pick up the second of my filigree elements. And again, I'm positioning it on the line. It's sort of touching the red bead. You can keep it a little bit more loose. What's important for later is that you will have to fit a Toho Treasure, yeah, like that, in here. So this is what you have to keep in mind. You have to fit a Toho Treasure in between these elements. So if you notice they're too close when they're touching the red bead, in your case, then just space them out a little bit more, a little bit further away from the red bead. But this should just work out on its own. Alright, so I'm going to be doing the same thing, stitching down the metal filigree, and then filling it up with beads and going on to the next one. And I'll meet you when I finished stitching on all of these elements. And that's the result. In my opinion, it already looks kind of cool. What we're going to be doing now is making some outlines. I'm going to start by adding a 15 in this narrowest space over here. So I'm just starting with a 15 that's going like sideways from one end to the other over in here, like that. I'm just going to do it all around. Just like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding Toho Treasures in the backstitch method. So you can see and you can watch a detailed video on backstitch and on bead embroidery stitches in our beginners playlist. But I'm just going to shortly summarize. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 and go back through 3. So I'm starting with 3 actually. You can slide that down your thread to see how far they will reach on your foundation. And attaching them to the foundation. And now I'm going back behind all of them and through all 3. Just like that. I'm going to be going around this one now. So I'm picking up another 2. And I'm putting them right next to that filigree. And I'm gonna go back in between these in order to go through the last 3 beads that I added. You can also try just adding 1 and going back through 2. This method is definitely more meticulous, but I have found that this method that I'm now using is producing like a smoother line, and with Toho Treasures, that's what I really wanted to achieve. So I'm adding 2 and going back through 3. Now what we're going to be doing later is we're going to use one of these beads, and I think it's going to be this one, to kind of branch out to the other side and do the outline in here. So right now I'm just going to the rest of the outline all the way down here, and I'm going to come back to you when it's time to branch out just to quickly show you how to do that. One more thing, once you reach this place, this tip, I want it to be particularly pointy. So I've added my 2 beads over here. I'm just putting my needle through that central point on top. I'm going back through 3 as always. And I'm adding my 2 next beads as per the usual. And going down with them so that they create like this break in here. And now I will be going back through 3 again, but what I'll do is I'll add an extra bead over here at the tip. And I just now continue adding my Toho Treasures as I normally would. Okay, so this is where I am. In the meantime, I added some new thread. And this is where I'm coming out of. So I came out in here in between these last 2 Toho treasure beads that I added. And now I'll be going up this line up until I reach a point where 2 beads would fit. Because if I come out of this bead, I wouldn't fit 2 Toho treasures in here probably if it's flat, because I was kind of holding it a bent. But if it's flat, I won't fit 2 Toho treasures in here if I come out of this bead here. So I will be coming out of this bead here. This will usually be 4 or 5 beads from the center. And now I'll just continue kind of doing the outline to the other side of here. So I'll just add my 2 beads, go like over here, and go back to that bead I was initially coming out of, and through the 3 of them. And I'll just continue all the way around the design. Okay, these are the last 2 beads. Now I'm going to go through the last 3 again. And I'm additionally going to go through that first one in this row as well. Now to the back. And if you want to make it even more even, because you may notice that every second bead kind of pops up in this outline, you can just go through all of the beads sort of again. And I'm going to start in here. And I'll do that now so you can see if it makes any difference. Alright, now what you think? Any better? It's just a little bit more even this way. Okay, I'm going to switch out the thread for some new one And we're just going to add one more tiny little touch to the entire thing. Okay guys, the one final touch are going to be red beads in these little corners here. So coming out on like one side of this corner, picking up one red bead, and coming in on the other side over here. There. And now I'm going to like kind of outline it a little bit by going back over here and adding 3 Toho Treasure beads over it. Like I'm coming in on the other side of it, almost the same spot where it is attached. And just like that. I'm not attaching the Toho Treasures anymore because I'm afraid that when I cut off the excess beading foundation, I might cut off the thread. And in this way, I can feel a little bit more safer that I won't cut anything off. I'll just go through that red bead for a second time here so that it's a little bit more sturdy. And I'm gonna go to the next corner. I'll pick up one red bead and do the exact same thing with these remaining 3 corners. Right, and that's it. That's the end of embroidery. I'll just finish the thread in the back now. And now it's time to cut off the excess foundation. The way I'll do it is first I'm going to cut off a square slightly outside the outline of the design, like over here. Now I'm going to mark where the corners of these are, and this should be kind of safe from cutting threads off because it doesn't really reach them. So I'm just marking it like that on all 4 sides. Alright, and now it's time to cut off the actual shape. So I'm just going to go from the back as I usually do, as close to the threads as I feel comfortable. And when I reach this kind of extra touch that we've added, I'm just going to cut around it, even though there's no thread to be wary of, because I want it to have this nice shape after I finish and not just be a square. Now you may leave a little bit more space from the thread. It won't like affect the final look very much, so just don't cut off too much to make sure that you don't cut off the thread. Alright, the final thing is I'm going to cut off the tips of these corners a little bit, just so I can fit a bead on top of there when I finish the edge with brick stitch. Alright, now we're going to need our finishing and backing materials. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace my design on the cardstock to make it stiffer. As I said, this is not like obligatory. I just like where when my kind of flat works are on the stiffer side. Now I'm going to cut it off with a little bit of a margin. And also I'm just going to disregard these kind of bulges here, and I'm going to cut off basically a square. There, this is going to go on the back of the work. So I'll be using the glue, and I have my trusty orange stick to distribute it because it's quite slimy. So I'm just pushing out a little bit of glue and trying to distribute it evenly. Now I'm going to straight ahead and stick on some ultra suede. I'm not going to cut off piece yet because I really hate wasting it. I think here we're going to have like a perfect spot. And again, I'm just pushing out a little bit of glue. And I'm going to distribute it on this back surface. Now I'm only going to go as far as the edge of my cardstock, and I'm still going to leave a little bit of a margin because this glue, when it dries, it tends to be a little bit stiffer, it tends to harden, so it's harder to go through it with my needle. And onto ultra suede it goes. And now wait at least an hour, or in the best case scenario, a whole day, to finish your pendant. Alright, now let's cut off the excess ultra suede. And I'm going to do this looking from the front, just roughly trying to keep it as close to that beading foundation as possible. Okay, I put quite a bit of thread on my needle. This is maybe half a wingspan of thread. You can use a shorter piece, and when you run out, when you do the edge, you can just finish the thread inside this outline of Toho Treasures and start a new one by going like in between the layers as we usually do for the edge. Now, we have some videos where I explain in detail the brick stitch edge technique. Now I'm just going to quickly recap it. So I'm starting in between the layers, going under the ultra suede and into the beading foundation. And I'm going on this side just enough so that I have like the space of one bead on one side of this tip over here. I pick up 2 Toho Treasures, and then I go through all of the layers right there in the middle. And up through that second one. I'm starting here because this is the tip, the corner where I'm going to attach the veil later on. So I really want it to be like even. Okay, I'm going in the middle again because I'm going to go on the other side of this corner. And now I'll be adding one by one. In between the next 3 ones, I'm going to add 3 picots with the 15-0. So I'm picking up a 15-0, and then I'm picking up a Toho Treasure, and I'm just going on as I normally would, and coming up only through that Toho Treasure. And this is how we get a little picot. And I'm going to do it 2 more times. Hopefully the middle one is going to be like in the middle of that little bulge right here, this little extra piece. Because why not make it even fancier, right? And this is what it's going to look like. Okay, I'm just going to continue doing the same thing all along the edge. Alright, that was the last bead. Now I'm treating that first bead in the edge as if I just wanted to add it through all the layers. And back up through that first bead there. Alright, now I'm at a point where I want to add the veil, and there's two ways basically in which you can do it. You can squeeze it right away, and then as you make the beaded loop, because we're going to be making a beaded loop over here, as you make that loop, you may just catch that veil and then you're done. Or you can first make the loop and only then close the veil on that loop, but just on the slight off chance that I'm going to crush any of the beads as I close the veil, I'm just going to close it over here. So I'm just holding the veil in between my pliers and just squeezing it. It's not exactly even. Let me just get my other pliers. Here I have a different pair of flat nose pliers, and I'm just going to try and correct this uneven veil. Right now it's even. The veil is closed, and now I'm going to be making a loop. I'm going to use Toho Treasures because they have slightly larger holes, and it will be easier to go through them like 3 more times just to make this a little bit more sturdy. Okay, so I'm picking up 7 Toho Treasures, and I'm picking up, since I'm going to be going this way, I'm picking up the veil, and I'm going down through the bead on the other side of this tip of this corner that I want to add it to. Just like that. Now I'm going to be going up and down through that loop of beads 3 more times to make it more secure. As I go through that bead that last time, I'm not going through any of the layers there. I'm just going through the bead, and now I'll be going forward to the front in between the beads in the outline here, and I'm gonna go into some of these beads, tie a knot by just hooking the thread under the thread that goes through these beads and making several loops and hiding the tail in some more beads. And that's it for this tutorial. I hope you liked it. The way I see this pendant is maybe as a choker on a velvet ribbon or something like that. What do you think of this idea? All of these materials that I showed you today can be, of course, found at eurekacrystalbeads.com. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye!